and Wellness with Divya Hari. Panic attacks. I'm sure you must have heard of this term very frequently. What are panic attacks? What are its signs and symptoms? How can you deal with it if you have it? To talk about all this, we have with us today Ms. Smriti Suresh. Smriti is a counselling psychologist. She is also queer affirmative and trauma informed in her approach. Let us welcome her on our show today. Hi Smriti, welcome.
Hi.
So, panic attacks are something which have been very less known because the symptoms of it is very similar to that of a heart attack. So many people think they're having a heart attack when in reality that might be a panic attack. So could you tell us what panic attacks are?
So what panic attacks are this sudden, very intense burst of anxiety, right? So when this burst of anxiety hits you, it causes firstly psychological symptoms. That is this immense feeling of dread. Something terrible is happening, the worst is happening, a catastrophe, right? Following that thought, following those psychological effects, physical effects hit you, right? So these effects are basically your body going to a state of alarm. That is speeding heartbeat, sweating, shaking. You're going through terror, basically, right? The thing about panic attacks is that they're sudden, right? And it's very hard to expect them. They're usually unexpected. But they're not fatal. They will end, right? You can ride them out. So that is how a panic attack is different from a heart attack, right? So a heart attack will get worse with time, but a panic attack, it will end. Once your anxiety peaks and it starts to fall, you've ridden it out.
Like you beautifully mentioned of how panic attacks eventually die down, but a heart attack can be fatal if not taken action. So considering how similar the symptoms might be because of its intensity itself, people confuse heart attack for a panic attack, right? So one more thing I also have observed or heard of from my clients especially is they feel like panic attacks can cause them harm or they can die of a panic attack. Like you mentioned, fatal can happen through a panic attack. How you mentioned that they are a result of anxiety, right? What exactly happens in a panic attack?
So in a panic attack, your body goes into a state of alarm. Something has triggered your stress response system. So your body is making you think that you're in some place where something bad is happening and you have no way to escape. You're trapped, right? So your body goes into this alarm state where your heart is beating fast, putting blood into your muscles. Your body is shaking, getting ready for action. It's ready to fight or it's ready to flee, right? So fight or flight symptoms. Other things are maybe you start to sweat, you start to get breathless because you're holding on to your breath. You're not able to keep up with the demands that your body is making. So you're getting breathless. Overall, once all of these alarm symptoms occur, you don't have something to fight. You don't have something to flee from because there's no threat existing, right? So that is the problem with a panic attack. If you had a threat, you would be perfectly primed to flee from it based on this panic attack. But there is no threat.
Like you mentioned, there is no threat. A lot of people experience or get panic attacks before an exam or before giving an interview, or even for that matter when they're expecting some results, right? So like you mentioned, there is no threat that can come out of writing an exam. The worst thing that can happen is you could fail, but there is no life-ending situation there, right? So how are few ways in which people can deal with panic attacks?
One thing that maybe an exam is not life-threatening, but that is a trigger.
Yes.
It is a cause, right, for the panic attack. So that is something, if you have recurrent panic attacks at that thing, you know that you are viewing exams as a threat. But you can't avoid them. You can't just avoid your exams. What you can do to cope with panic attacks is to know that they will end. You can cope with it. You can get through it. Yeah, once you remember that, the stress of, oh no, I'm going to die, that won't happen. Because you know you won't.
Yes.
It's a panic attack.
Yes.
That's one thing. Another thing that you can do to cope with the panic attack is grounding yourself. So one way to ground yourself is the 3-3-3 technique. So this is, you notice 3 things you can see. you notice 3 things that you can touch, and then there are 3 body parts of yourself that you move, right? For example, your leg, your arm, your head. Do this repeatedly until you feel like your symptoms are reducing. And before you know it, your symptoms are over. Panic attacks can last from around 5 minutes to 20 minutes. Sometimes it lasts longer than 20 minutes and maybe an hour. But it won't go beyond that.
So you mentioned about how there is a trigger for a panic attack, right? So that trigger is causing you to feel anxious. So a lot of times anxiety and panic are two similar yet different things, right? So how would you differentiate between an anxiety attack and a panic attack?
So a panic attack is now, immediate. So I'm going to flee from this current threat right now. Anxiety has to do with worry. So you feel something bad could happen, but I can do something right now to fix it, but it might not get fixed. Worries, right? But a panic is right now, immediate. I need to leave this situation, but I'm trapped. That sort of terror is a panic attack. An anxiety attack, you can sort of understand why that's happening. So I'm afraid of the future, I'm afraid of the past, I'm afraid of consequences. You can understand why you're getting an anxiety attack. Panic attack is different because you don't know what it is that suddenly triggered you into this primal nature, this sort of animal nature where you're like, something terrible is attacking me, I'm trapped, and I'm going to fight back. That's what state your body has become in.
Like you mentioned very beautifully how anxiety and panic can be different. Is there any particular age where this can onset, or can this be found across all age groups? A lot of people feel like children can't get panic attacks, or people also say you're too young to have a panic attack, this doesn't happen in this age. What do you have to say about that?
Right, so panic attacks can occur at any age. Generally, people have found that in your 20s is when you get onset, right? Or maybe in adolescence. But childhood panic attacks do exist, especially when a child has reached a point where they have a sensitive stress response system. So that means they've gone through so much stress or so many life-threatening situations that they are sensitive to even the slightest change, the slightest threat, right? That their body goes into this state of panic. That is mainly how it goes. But whether you're a child, whether you're an adult, whether you're an old person, you can still go through these things. Right? The best way to deal with it is to cope with it and try to be compassionate to your body.
We spoke about how panic attacks and heart attacks are different in general. However, their symptoms, their physical symptoms are very different too, right? So could you tell us how we can differentiate between the symptoms of an anxiety attack and the symptoms of a heart attack?
There's a reason people keep getting confused whether they're having a panic attack or a heart attack. Because when you're having a heart attack, you have similar symptoms. Breathlessness, heart pain, chest pain that continues, right? You can also have these same symptoms in a panic attack. They are coming from different causes. So a panic attack is coming from a feeling of a threat. A heart attack is coming because of a blockage in the arteries. Heart attack symptoms. But often the symptoms can feel the same. If you ever feel like you're having a heart attack, like say the pain in your chest is radiating to your jaw, your arm, things like that, you should contact emergency services. It's better to address a false alarm than to think everything's okay when it's not, right? So that is the best way to deal with it.
It was greatly mentioned how seeking for emergency care is the first step, because we cannot know what exactly is happening in our body, right? What are some of the causes of a person having a panic attack?
The causes of a panic attack are not exactly known. Like most psychological disorders, you don't know why people keep getting panic attacks, why it happens. But we do know that it's quite common in people, and we do know that it's because of a sensitive stress response system. So when people have a sensitive stress response system, so they have gone through maybe early childhood stress, gone through childhood traumas, right? That indicates that you will get panic attacks. Also, a thing that indicates that you might get panic attacks is if you have close family members loved ones, right, who also face panic attacks. So that is an indicator, it's a risk factor. But again, we don't know exactly what triggers them. Sometimes you don't know what the trigger is at all. And if you go through life worrying that you might face another trigger, that can severely limit your life.
You spoke about how panic attacks can be a biological cause or even as a result of a traumatic incident in your childhood. We covered what causes panic attacks, what are the symptoms of it, and how a person can basically deal with a panic attack apart from seeking therapy or emergency care separately. So thank you so much for whatever you mentioned. Before we wrap up, can you give us the mental health tip of the day?
My mental health tip of the day is one of the things that can help protect your mental health, right, is gratitude journaling. So gratitude journaling is when you sit down and you thank a limited number of things every day. That is 5 things every day you give thanks to. This reminds you that there is more to life than your worries, than your problems, and there are things that you can be grateful for, that you can be happy for in life.
Like you mentioned, gratitude journaling is an excellent tool to bring us to or shift our focus to things which we have in life. For example, I'm grateful to be able to just have a good and healthy life. I'm grateful to have a roof to live under. I'm grateful to be able to have 3 meals a day. Just pinpointing things that you have in your life and saying thanks to them is a very helpful tool. Thank you so much for coming here and educating us about panic attacks. I hope you know what a panic attack is. I will be back with another episode. Until then, take care, stay safe.
Click on the bell icon to watch our latest videos.